So have you heard about the atheist, the Muslim, the Christian, and the Jew? They walk into a bar and the bartender says, "Is this a joke?" Well, these days, religion is no joke. In fact, if there is a joke, it appears to be that the joke is on us. For thousands of years, religion was not held to be funny. But as secular life progressed, and especially, I think, in the last 50 years, it's become possible, at least in the West, to satirize religion, to expose its various foibles, and perhaps even worse. This, of course, has led to a fairly furious counterattack by religious zealots on the other side, and so the battle is joined. We're going to put the cat in among the pigeons by calling up on stage Professor Richard Dawkins. In the last year, Richard has invigorated and pretty well dominated this worldwide debate about religion. His book, The God Delusion, has been a worldwide bestseller, a publishing phenomenon, and I want to thank his publisher and his publicist, Lisa Zaritsky, for getting Professor Richard Dawkins up on stage here at ideaCity07. Thank you, Richard.
Shortly before I left for Canada, the chief rabbi of the Commonwealth, Sir Jonathan Sacks, wrote an article in the Times of London, which I thought was a very broad-minded and rather moving article. He mentioned a series of books by atheists, among them mine, and he attributed the motivation for writing these books to a feeling that religion was manifestly a source of a certain amount of evil in the world. And I quote, "Sunni and Shia fight in the Middle East, as do Muslim and Hindu in Kashmir, Buddhists and Hindus in Sri Lanka, Muslims and Jews in Israel. Religions still do not know how to live together in peace. That's when people start writing books about atheism, and they become bestsellers." As I said, he thought the reason for this spate of atheistic books was a reaction against the warlike consequences of religion. And that may be true for some of my colleagues, but it's not what I want to talk about today. I am interested in the simple question of whether religious beliefs are actually true. I want to argue that on a matter of probability, it's extremely unlikely that any kind of supernatural creative intelligence exists. The argument I'm going to use is a kind of inverse of the argument from design. Living things are highly complicated, they're elegant, they're beautiful, they're highly improbable statistically. They couldn't come about by chance. The more complicated a living thing is, the less likely it is to come about by sheer luck. Therefore, God must have done it. That's how the argument goes. Fred Hoyle expressed it in his famous misunderstanding of natural selection, the great Boeing 747 example. He said, to believe that life could be formed by Darwinian processes is equivalent to believing that a hurricane could blow through a junkyard and have the luck to assemble a Boeing 747. And that is an eloquent statement of the great creationist misunderstanding, which is that Darwinian evolution is a matter of chance. Of course, it isn't. It's a matter of gradual, cumulative natural selection. And the stress is on the word cumulative. Because it's cumulative, you have a slow, steady, incremental climb up the gentle slopes of Mount Improbable. And at the top of Mount Improbable, you have a very improbable, complicated, beautiful, elegant biological structure, the biological equivalent of a Boeing 747. The essence of the argument that I want to put is that God himself would have to be a fortiori, even more complicated and improbable an entity if he is to do what is expected of him, which is to create life or to create the universe, let alone listen to prayers and forgive sins. The essence of my argument is that God is the ultimate Boeing 747, and that any attempt to deploy the argument from improbability, which is actually the main argument that any theist uses in favor of theism, any attempt to deploy the argument from improbability backfires, shoots itself in the foot, because it can be turned on itself, it can be turned on God. Now, the Darwinian theory works beautifully once life gets started, but there may be a gap at the beginning which gives people problems. What about the origin of life? What about that first step that kick-starts the evolutionary process? Chemists are working on it. It's a chemical problem. It's a matter for chemists. Chemists are working on it, and obviously it's very hard to do because it happened a long time ago under very different conditions, and so all we can hope for is some kind of plausibility argument backed up by theoretical models. And